everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Solar Sidekicks. My name is Pat Southwell, and I will be your host. Today we are recording episode number 21. So that's the 21st one. So interestingly enough, that puts me into the top 1% of podcasters throughout the world, which I think is quite funny. It's quite a low bar, but apparently that's the case. Google it, everyone, if you're interested. It's the case. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional landowners of where we're recording this today, and that's the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respects to all elders, past, present, and emerging. All right, and today we have a guest, as we normally do. We may as well get straight into the introductions today. Welcome to Carrum, Scott Beesley from Energy Safe Victoria.
Thanks very much, Pat. Hello, everyone out there. Glad to be here.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Scott, I really appreciate you coming in to Carrum. Now, a lot of people would know sometimes these podcasts can be a bit more on the lighter side, but I reckon this is going to get, let's not say heavy, but there's going to be a lot of stuff in here. If you're tuning into this for a nice, heartfelt story, this is probably not the one, but if you want to know more about regulations, you want to know about standards, you want to know what's going on in our world, which we work in day to day with the compliance side of things, this is the podcast that you want to be listening to. So we do these every now and then. We've had a few really technical ones, and this is going to be, I reckon, of the same nature. But first of all, Scott, even though it's going to be pretty heavy with the things I've mentioned, I'm interested to know a bit more about yourself. So you are a compliance officer, is that right, at ESV?
That's right, yeah.
ESV, in solar as well, or in the renewable energy department, is that right?
Yep, we have a renewable energy team at Energy Safe, and I'm a compliance and enforcement officer. Compliance and enforcement officer,
yep. Okay, no worries. And you've been at ESV now, you've been there a few years now, haven't you?
Yeah, just on 5 years.
5 years. Yep. Yeah, good stuff. No worries. And so you're an LEI as well. You did the training, A grade. What else have you? Correct. That's pretty much, enforcement officer, A grade and LEI. Good stuff.
Correct. I've been in renewables for about 16 years.
Yep, that same as me.
I'm involved with the standard committees as well, so have an influence on those and the development, and do a fair bit of education and guidance for LEIs and LEWs. So.
Yeah. Now, those that don't know, you'll have some may not know what LEW is, licensed electrical worker. You'd hear LEI all the time because you hear me bang on about it, but a licensed electrical worker. So, all right, no, that's good. Let's go with the obligatory question first of all about yourself. So, are you a solar sidekick or are you a solar superhero? What do you reckon, Scott?
Gee, you asked me this question in a few pre-notes, and it really depends on which hat I have on.
Yep.
So I've had to think about this. So I see myself.
There's a lot of pressure on this question.
It is. Because who says they're a superhero? I mean, really.
You know what? People are now. They're embracing the inner superhero because when they say they're a sidekick, I'm like, no, you're not. You're a superhero. Yeah. You are doing superhero stuff.
Yeah. So I believe, first of all, I'm a sidekick. So the superheroes are the guys and girls out there that are working the long hours, doing the hard yards, quoting, designing, installing, meeting the needs of the customers to lower their cost of living and make a huge difference in the climate with the renewable energy they're putting in. So I feel, as a sidekick, I'm providing support to the industry, education and clarification, and helping that out with the Australian standards, changing that landscape. I'm always happy to take a call from a electrical worker or an inspector, who always has a curly question and needs to go ahead with a difficult install. That's what I like to get the response from people, and I feel I'm a sidekick in those circumstances.
Yep.
My alternate ego, unfortunately, is my role as a enforcement officer with Energy Safe Victoria.
Yep.
So whilst any electrician or inspector who's breached the Act and has clearly done the wrong thing would see me as a villain, it's a very confronting side of the job, and it's not an enjoyable side, but someone has to do it. It's like those bloody parking ticket officers.
Yep.
But I tell you what, when I find an unlicensed worker or an unsupervised apprentice that's working by themselves on a roof, or unsafe electrical work, I can tell you the homeowners that I speak to, the electricians that are working hard, quoting and trying to get jobs against people that are working with unlicensed workers, and the parents of the kids who have apprentices out there. These are all people that I feel I am acting as a superhero for. It's a very important part of my job.
Yep. I agree. Look, it's sort of a little bit why I got into it as well. This whole transition to renewable energy, we can't just go bull at a gate and do whatever the hell we want. It's got to be done in a safe way. It's got to be done in a compliant way. And yeah,
I
mate,
agree.
I'm on the. I've made a living out of it because that's what I believe in as well. So, on the same page with you with that, and I think that's important to reiterate that too. That it is about the community, isn't it? You're trying to keep the community as safe as possible.
Yeah, and that's our role as a regulator, to keep the community safe, to uphold their safety values.
Yep.
It's not about workmanship. We don't take action against poor workmanship, although we hate it. We always encourage best practice.
Yep.
But we need to stick to the black and white rules, the words of the legislation, and to say you can do this, you can't do this. And unfortunately, we're the ones that enforce that. And there's plenty of work out there for everyone to do. But they need to be doing it right. They don't cut corners. They don't put people's safety at risk. And they don't put workers' safety at risk. And that's what we're all about.
That's good. It's really good to hear it from those. So hear the words coming out of your mouth. Like, I've heard you say it a million times, but even just other people out there, like sometimes I think a regulator can just get a perception, like this isn't really the case, but they can get a perception they're just coming around with a big stick and whacking people and, you guys are on a commission or something like that. You hear all that sort of stuff, but yeah, it's all about keeping the community safe and keeping the industry safe.
That's right. And you talk about the big stick, and it used to be, I don't know, back in the SEC days, you had no rapport. You could not talk to the inspectors at all. It was either do this or get out of the industry. Yeah. Whereas now it's more so, give us a call. We're open to you to call us.
Yep.
To talk through things, to clarify things, to get the right way to approach the jobs that you need to do. So we're about supportive and guidance.
Yep.
If you're doing the wrong thing and blatantly breaching the act, you're going to cop some enforcement action. I can tell you right now.
Yep.
But the best thing is to contact people, to work, installers to work with their LEIs to work with Energy Safe, to work with your industry bodies. We're all in the same industry and we all need to work together. We work closely with the industry bodies to get a consistent message out there, and it works really well. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really, really good point you raised there. I'll probably take some words out of your mouth, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I reckon if you end up doing enforcement on, going with some enforcement action on some people, and it turns out like I would assume that the ones that are willing to learn, you're not going to probably see them again, and they're going to be the ones who have may have made a mistake or something like that, and they're willing to get better. You're not going to see them, another 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or whatever. But the ones that are blatantly making the mistakes are the ones you want to be targeting. Correct. And it's the repeat offenders. Everyone makes mistakes. We understand that. But you learn from your mistakes. If you don't listen, if you don't learn from those mistakes and keep doing it, then you're probably in the wrong industry. You're in it to make money, and it's not. Everyone's here to make money. Everyone's here to support their families and to get the boats and the bikes and whatever else they find is important in their life. But it's about community safety as well. And if you're not willing to play that role, then those repeat offenders will be forced out of the industry. Absolutely. Good stuff. All right. Well, that's a pretty heavy start. It is. No, but it's good. No, but it's good. It's my world I live in as well. Like, I don't just... everyone probably thinks I just, come into Radio Carrum and just do podcasts, all the time and all that sort of stuff and talk about mental health. But it's not. I'm actually out there on the roof doing this stuff and dealing with these issues as well. And it's what we do. It's what we do for a job. So, and whilst regulation and standards do become quite boring and a lot of people don't read them because they're quite deep and heavy. We'll go through some of the things and I'll try and lighten it a little bit so that we can understand it on a normal level rather than having to be lawyers or engineers to understand what we're talking about.
For sure. I think that'd be great. That'd be really, I think our listeners would appreciate a lot of that. All right, well, let's get into some of this sort of stuff. So we're talking about, so this industry is pretty young, right? You mentioned that in some of the notes you've sent back. Been a lot of changes to our standards and our rules over the last 15 to 20 years or so. It looks like we've got some more changes coming. What do you reckon? What do you reckon the main concerns you sort of see where people get it wrong? I think I know what you're going to say, and it may have something to do with Section 8, but of AS 3000. But where do you reckon a lot of the people get stuff wrong where they should be getting it right?
Yeah, look, it is a very young industry, and for that we see a lot of innovation coming in, a lot of new designs, new installation requirements, and this is why the standards keep changing, because we have new products. We find issues that we need to address to cover those safety issues. And with that, the guys everyone, both installers and inspectors, need to keep up to date with their understanding of what the products they're installing and the testing requirements around those. What we're seeing now with the new standards coming in is further testing requirements. So 4777.1 for inverters. It's bringing in new testing requirements around new scenarios that we're seeing, not just the testing requirements around Section 8 of AS 3000. So you could go ahead and perform your mandatory testing, but it may not be enough to identify certain issues that are coming out with new products. So it's about being aware of that and knowing your new products into the market, and understanding the testing that is required to identify those. It's so important for an LEI and an LAW. I do use a lot of acronyms because I'm in that world.
It's easier.
Just stop me if
No, that's fine. No, this audience understands acronyms.
And there will be a few more, but I'll try and emphasise those.
That's right.
So we all know we need to test to AS 3000, Section 8, but we also need to, say we're doing PV arrays, we need to test to 5033. If we're doing inverters, 4777.1, and battery systems, 5139. Everyone has additional testing in there. As well as that, additional testing may be required by the manufacturer. So they have to be aware of that.
Interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
People don't think of that. They think, we'll do our 6 mandatory testing in Section 8. We do that, we're fine. We'll sign the certificate, good to go. It's not the case anymore. You need to do your homework. And you need to understand those testing and keep up to date, both for the installer, the electrician, and the inspector. And my advice to inspectors out there is know your limits and only work within your knowledge.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. There's been times where I've looked at products and I've gone, okay, looks like it's installed right, it's testing out correctly, but I don't know. I have not read the manufacturer's instructions to a point where I'm happy to sign that off.
Correct. There's a lot of products out there and it's quite difficult. And I know myself, I go to some products and some installations, like we now have solar for apartments where we've got solar sharing and all sorts of things. No one can just walk in. You can have an RE licence, which is a great situation we've now got in Victoria. We don't have any of the G-class inspectors that can just walk in and say, my licence says I can do solar. Never done one before, but I can sign it off. We all know the pitfalls and there's so much more to know. Same with any other area. Inspecting lifts, you don't just walk in and inspect the lift. You need to know about the control systems and how they operate. So know your limits as an inspector. Do your research. Once you understand it, go right ahead. Once you have the right endorsement for it, go right ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I've always said this especially about batteries. Like, go back to the installation world, not so much about inspecting, but go back to batteries. And most electricians can install batteries, right? They can. It's under their license that they're able to do it. But there's another thing in there, which I'm sure you'd know the clause or the legislation, whichever one it is, about being able to only do work that you're specifically trained for. And I don't know what exact words are. I just know that this is a thing. So if you go and you install a battery and your license may say you can do it, but you haven't done any training on it, you don't really know about it or the limitations of it, you could still land yourself in hot water.
Absolutely. And I believe that's why a lot of the manufacturers of batteries have said our product and our system is slightly different from everyone else. So to install our batteries, Tesla and Phase, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names.
No, you can mention names, absolutely.
But these people run training programs.
They do.
And accreditation so that their installers are aware what to do and to install it to the manufacturer's requirements. They're trained to do so, so that's a perfect scenario.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for me, where I see this being an issue in our industry is you talk about, like, I would never try and tell someone how to run their business, right? But you might have a solar installer who's doing a lot of subcontract work, right, for the retailer. So they just get given jobs every day, whatever it is. They go in, pick them up, get them sent out, whatever it is. Now, they could have different panels. They could have different inverters, maybe different batteries, different racking, different different limitations and different requirements. Now, I know that they have to be over every single one of those installation manuals and know what they are, right?
Every one of those products you mentioned has a different installation requirement for different manufacturers.
Every one of them. So I've had installers come up to me and go, yeah, that's all good and well, but what are we supposed to do? Just knock the work back and, what are we supposed to do? And I say to them, I go, if you're not confident, don't do it. You just can't. You can't run the risk. Because if you do, you are running the gauntlet.
Correct.
It's as simple as that.
Correct.
So many, you might be talking about, there might be, over a week, an installer might have to be over 10 or 15 different types of manufacturers' instructions, and they have to know them. Look, I won't say they have to know them word for word back to front, but they must have a pretty deep understanding of what those limitations are and what those intricacies are of that product.
Correct. You have to know the main points around that.
Yep.
Whether that be clearances around the inverter.
Yep.
Whether that be this one inverter requires a non-combustible barrier to be put behind.
Yep.
Whereas another one doesn't. So you would know in your head when you're going to put that inverter A on the wall.
Yep.
On a weatherboard wall, I need a combustible barrier because the manufacturer's instructions say that. So you need to be across those. Very correct. Very.
Yeah. So I suppose that's a warning I sort of give out to installers, electricians who are working with different products either every day or every week or whatever. That's something they've got to know. So I would advise as an inspector, this is me talking, I would suggest not to do that unless you are really, really good at retaining knowledge, or you're going to walk around with these manuals and check them every single time you install them. A lot of the time, the business models that these companies have, it's a bit churn and burn. They've got to get through them. So I'd be suggesting for people be careful with that, because at the end of the day, it's your license.
That's right.
That's what you need to protect.
And I think that's why a lot of people have the business model where they have a few different models that they offer.
Yep.
So they know that system very well. System A, B, and C. Your gold, silver, bronze sort of thing.
That's right.
As long as they know those, they're working safely and they're working to the requirements.
The ones that do that I can see are the ones that have got the consistently good work. They've got their processes in place. They've got their installation techniques. They know they're not going to get thrown a curveball every now and then.
Yep.
And they know they do it. It's repetition. So
correct.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, that's good. Yeah. That's good. All right, so let's. Where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about batteries a little bit first? We can have a bit of a deep dive into some of them. I noticed you mentioned some of the things about some battery non-compliances. You want to go into that? That's kind of your domain, that one, isn't it? You've sort of you've taken that one, the batteries, a little bit, from what my understanding is, and you've run with it, and that's.
Well, it's sort of the my history and everything that goes along in former lives. It sort of brings you to a point.
Yeah.
So being like yourself, being involved since around 2008.
Yeah.
And seeing the development come through of solar and batteries has now sort of got me a good understanding. I did work for Bosch as well as a technical manager with Bosch Australia. So I've got a bit of that manufacturing understanding as well behind and the testing that goes along with that. So that's been really helpful in my career.
Yep.
With the battery systems, and we talk about non-compliances, there's some real serious ones we're seeing out there. Now, keeping in mind that all these things we're talking about, the majority of things out there are really good. The guys are doing fantastic installs.
It's good to hear.
Yep. It's really good. It's not like years ago when they first come out and people were just banging them on the wall, putting them anywhere.
Treating it like an aircon kind of thing.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
We see a very high quality of installation out there, and that's really good to see. The stuff that I do see come through for the unsafe reports, the rectification reports from both Solar Victoria audits and Energy Safe audits.
Yep.
So I see the worst side of things, and it's only a small percentage, which is really good.
Yep.
But these are some of the common issues that have been coming through.
Let's get into them. I'm interested to know.
Yeah, and quite serious.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got one thing that come up the end of last year and the start of this year.
Yep.
We see a lot of, we saw an influx of multi-mode inverters and battery systems come into Australia. And with that comes a serious risk. If they're installed and these risks are left in there, we've seen live terminals of multi-mode inverter outputs being left exposed, presenting obviously a risk of electric shock if it's touched.
So is this the AC or DC?
This is the AC.
On the AC
this
side.
Is a backup port.
Backup port.
Yeah.
On the actual, so that's on the, you're talking about
this is on a multi-mode inverter.
On the multi-mode inverter. So this is the AC input.
No.
Output, sorry.
Yep. You've got an AC out. Yep.
Sorry.
You've got your normal supply.
Yeah, normal supply, yep.
And then you've got a backup supply.
Battery.
If grid was to drop out,
yes,
you would have power from this backup port. So remembering that these units are mounted commonly about 1.5 off the ground. All right. So within touch of little fingers, it can just reach up and touch it.
So what are you talking about here? Like actual exposed live terminals?
Yeah.
So not behind one layer of insulation. You're talking open to...
Completely open and not IP2X. So they can be touched with a finger. Okay, they failed the finger test.
Scary stuff.
It is. Now, these obviously can be... If you're doing your install, these can be found doing your verification test under the visual verification section.
Yep.
Okay, just by looking at it, you can see that it's exposed terminals. So even if you do a commissioning test to run the system, you would be testing that voltage as well. So a visual test and a voltage test would identify, I've got live parts, I'm not walking away from this.
Yep.
Now these were passing through a installer and an inspector, unfortunately. Okay, so two parts, they were left energised and the customers were left with a real hazard sitting there. Okay, that was one issue.
Interesting. That's scary. Honestly, that's scary.
I
think of that and I'm like...
We've also seen battery systems that create a secondary MEN internally.
Yep. I've seen this.
Yep.
All
right. Which is probably all well and good in Europe and wherever else.
They've got different earthing systems.
Correct.
Yep.
Different systems like that.
Yep.
So when they come here, it creates a system where we have the earth and neutral running in parallel.
Yep.
We know that's non-compliant to our AS3000 wiring rules.
Yep.
And it can be found with your testing.
Yes.
We've seen battery systems where the installers haven't understood the basic battery installation requirements of AS3000. All right, so they haven't ensured the neutral continuity has been maintained between the neutral backup neutral bar and the main neutral bar. What that does, it causes a difference in potential between your earthing system and the backup neutral.
Yep.
So you could have 110 volts AC across those. Again, risk of electric shock.
Yep.
This can be found with your neutral testing. So the picture I'm painting here is all these issues that we're seeing can be picked up by making sure they carry out their mandatory testing.
Yep.
Okay. These aren't difficult tests to do, but they're vital tests to do, both by the installer and the inspector. Don't leave it for one or the other to do. If they've signed the certificate, you don't say, oh, they've done the test, I don't have to.
Yeah, of course. That's why they're there. They're there to check it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So they must ensure the testing's done.
Yep.
And they must ensure they've done their visual test to ensure there's no exposed live parts.
Yep.
Okay. And test again. That's my message.
That's a good message.
Okay.
Yep.
But as I said, luckily it's a minority. The majority of people are doing a fantastic job out there.
Yep. Okay. I see you mentioned about you've mentioned that about the barriers. The barriers not provided to live terminals. That's what you spoke about before. Is that?
Yeah, that's another issue. That's on battery systems.
Yeah. Okay.
So what? I'm going to one this week. Going to check out one in the next couple of days. But it's a situation where barriers haven't been established around live terminals, whether that be a battery circuit breaker, a battery fuse that's added on there that doesn't allow the barriers, the IP2X or the correct insulation around those terminals.
Would that normally be the ones you've seen? Would that be from a manufacturer's part that's been left off, or potentially a barrier would have needed to have been put in place as like a custom made type thing?
Yeah.
Could be either?
Two parts. The first one I spoke about on the multi-mode inverters was a manufacturer's plug hadn't been fitted.
Yes. I know which one you're talking about now. Yep.
They figured it's not used. I don't use this plug, so I'll leave it in the box.
Yep.
But in having doing so, they're leaving an exposed live part. Now, the problem with that inverter was that if they did fit the plug on, they'd covered their exposed live part, but it was removable with the use of a tool. Now, that then becomes not an installation issue. It's now a manufacturer's issue.
Yep. Okay.
So the installer is protected there.
Mm-hmm.
The inspector's protected there. They can just defect it and say it's if they spot it, then it's not required to spot it.
Yep.
You'd like them to flag it, because we should be thinking all the time and think, oh, I can remove this by hand and access a live part. I should report this, and then it goes through the equipment safety, and it is a product issue. So the manufacturer has to have that rectified.
Yeah, or they'll face a recall or whatever.
Yep.
Cool.
Correct.
All right, that's cool. That's good stuff. All right, what else you got on batteries? Also, I've got a duplicated page there. Where are we?
Yep.
Battery. What else have we got on batteries?
Warning labels.
Oh, labelling. Here we go.
Let's go with lovely topic.
Yeah, look, it's important though. Like I bang on about this a lot, right? Labelling gets a bad rap. It's annoying, right? You're an installer. You've got labels everywhere, and you don't know what goes where sometimes, or whatever, or you get sent too many labels. It's so important though. Like, emergency services are going to use those labels. They need to know what is there. Anyone operating the equipment needs to know it's there. Like, I don't know. Everyone talks about labelling, how annoying it is. I think you can make labelling look good, and it can be used to make the job aesthetically pleasing. You probably won't comment on that, but I'm sure you've got a lot of things to say about when people get it wrong.
Yeah, I can talk about making it aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Just don't put the whole label safety kit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So let's face it, renewable energy, the Renewable Energy Standards Committee love a label.
Oh, don't they? Yeah.
Rather than consolidating them.
Yeah, I know.
We tend to go, we need a label for this. We'll put another one on.
I know. We missed the mark. Like I would like anyway. I would like less labels to be more concise.
Yep.
And I think it would make it more obvious. But at the moment, we have the set of standards.
Yep.
They've been put together for a reason, and they are there. It's pretty clear what goes in. But you need to know. You need to know this stuff.
Now, by saying that comment I just said, I'm taking aim at myself too, because I am on the standards.
You're on the standards committee.
But it means means that we have a job to do. We're just starting to look at 5139 now.
Yep.
We just started the meetings yesterday.
Yep.
So we'll continue on that path of seeing where we can improve those standards.
Yeah, that'll be a popular change, I reckon, if that comes. Anyway, good luck with that.
So the problem also is that we have so many different battery chemistries on the market, different types and systems.
Yep.
And the manufacturers all want to produce one kit. They don't want to stock lots of kits. So they come up with one kit that suits all.
Yep.
So it's up to the installers to determine what labels need to go on.
Yep.
So by doing that, we need to look at the standards, and specifically, if you're doing a battery system, 5139, there's a section on the hazard warning labels.
Yep.
On understanding the hazards.
Yep.
Now, when you understand the hazards around a battery system, if you put all the warning labels on there, we're left with lithium battery systems, say a pre-assembled integrated lithium battery system that has warning labels on it for do not smoke or spark or cause a spark, and wear full PPE because of a chemical spill. And yet if you look in the standard and read section 7 of the standard, which goes into the hazard warning labels, it talks about lithium battery systems. The hazards that are not applicable with lithium battery is your explosive gas and your chemical spills. Don't put the labels on. Anything to do with those two, put them back in your van for when you're doing a lead acid battery system.
That's a good tip, that one.
All right?
That's a good tip, that one.
But what you do need to understand under warning labels is that your toxic fumes.
I knew you were going to mention toxic fumes.
Yeah.
Yep, it's
it
there.
It says in there, a lithium battery is subject to a toxic fume hazard when it goes into fault.
Fault conditions, yeah.
Fault conditions.
Yeah.
So it says that it must be put on. So if you think about the most common battery that's put in the system at the moment is lithium batteries.
Yep.
No chemical spills, no explosive hazard, unless the manufacturer specifically says that they are.
Yep.
But you do need a toxic fume label on it.
Yep.
The rest of your labels are all just your normal installation labels. So that cleans the battery up. Okay. Aesthetically, makes it look a lot better than having every label on there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it'd be great if we could ping people for putting too many labels on.
I know. Unfortunately, it's not a defect for that.
It's not. I know for missing it. Yeah, but I've noticed that because I think you guys have done a bit of comms on that, and Solar Vic have as well about the toxic fumes label. I've seen an improvement in that.
Yep.
That's certainly been something that almost doesn't. I mean, people still miss things, but that used to get missed maybe a year or two ago. It used to get missed a lot.
Yep.
I'm hardly ever pulling it up now.
And it was because of people defecting labels as well. It's a misconception by the inspectors as well. They were saying, oh, God, you need to put all the labels on. Just put them all on because we cover all bases. So it's about not putting them all on. It's about understanding the product and the risks associated with those products and doing that assessment. And again, if you're working with the same product all the time, you should know that product. Yeah. So your Tesla doesn't need that. Your lithium battery labelling, you need to get that down pat.
Yep. All right, cool. All right. No worries. All right, look, actually, what we might do, Scott, let's have a quick break. I think this is good. We're going to come back to the labelling when we come back. There's a lot, because there's a fair bit to cover with labelling, I reckon. Not just with batteries, with solar as well. But anyway, we'll cover a bit more of that. It's been a really good start so far. So it hasn't been as scary as I thought it might be. No, it's been good. It's actually good to talk about this sort of stuff.
We'll get into the scary stuff after the break.
Yeah, okay. No worries. All right. So we'll go to a quick break and we'll be back in just a few moments. Okay, and we are back from our break. All right. Now, Scott, I sort of half interrupted you a little bit in that last bit. We just started talking about battery labelling and you've written down hazard warning requirements, and we went into that a little bit. You got some other stuff you want to share about some things you see with the battery labels and non-conformances and how serious it can be?
No worries.
Yep.
So labelling overall has caused a lot of confusion over the time, and it's actually the highest defect under the Solar Victoria Battery Audit Program.
Yep.
So it's something that certainly needs to be addressed.
And I've noticed most of those labels, because I do those Solar Vic audits, most of those labels do come up as a rectification when they are not correct.
Correct.
And which I think is a really good thing because they're important.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we think about labels and we think, it's just a sticker that's on there. As you said, as you hit on before, labels allow us to operate things.
Yep.
And to operate under an emergency, and it also identifies the hazards that are within that installation to the emergency services that come along, and that's really important to the way they approach a situation.
Yep.
So it's really important we get it right. So the battery hazard warning labels, we've already discussed. I've talked about that.
Yep.
Some other common issues that I see out there are the sign stating the voltage and current of a battery system, which is under clause 7.6 in 5139. I quite often see that not there, and you'd see a lot of audits as well where it's just not put on the battery system at all, and it is required to be there.
So that's only, I'm going to test my own knowledge, I don't even have a standard in front of me. That's only for over DVCA?
Yes,
that's
correct.
Right, yep. So that's not required when you do, it's DVCA, it's not required, but when you go above that,
correct,
it is required, the hazardous voltage label. Yep.
And
there you go, people. I do know stuff. I don't just pretend I know things. Anyway,
shutdown procedures.
Yep.
It's a big thing because you can't just put on your generic shutdown procedure for systems. It needs to be specific for that system.
Yep.
And it needs to clearly follow what you need to do under an emergency or even maintenance to be able to shut the system down. That includes the wording being able to reflect. If it says specific wording on that shutdown procedure to operate, the circuit breaker or isolation device needs to be exactly worded so that it's not, you have to remember, it's not always an electrician or a trained or authorised person that's shutting these systems down.
Yep.
So for anyone to come along, the homeowner's going to clean his panels. He needs to shut it down. the homeowner's going to, do some rendering around a battery system.
Yeah.
They need to shut it down. But to shut it down, they need to know exactly and clearly where to go to shut it down and how to shut that thing down.
For sure. I totally agree with exactly what you've said. I've seen a lot of this, right, where on the surface, a shutdown procedure on a battery looks correct and you go, that looks about right. And then you dig into it, right? And the relationship to the equipment is different to how it's labelled. Mm-hmm. So they may call it, I've seen like a backup isolator. It's mentioned in the shutdown procedure. And then you go to the backup isolator and it's called AC isolator.
Correct.
I see that all the time.
Yeah.
Or you see a backup isolator next to an inverter isolator and they're both called AC isolator.
Correct.
That's I think that's huge. I think that's something that still we need to learn some lessons on.
Yep. I've even seen from the larger systems where a shutdown procedure will say turn off the main AC isolator, and you look around for it and you go, well, where is that? It's not adjacent to the equipment.
Yep.
And there isn't a cabinet there or a switchboard. And the ones I've seen have had a additional subboard that's been put on with all the control gear that's in it.
Yep.
But it's not even labelled that it's anything to do with the battery system.
Yep.
So it's about clearly labelling not only the components, but also the enclosure that contains the components as well, so that someone can quickly look around and go, oh yeah, that's located within this cabinet.
Yep.
Open the cabinet and operate the isolation device.
For sure. Big one. That's a huge one. Yep. I'm all over that one.
Yep. No worries. Now we have to also understand that all BESS, battery energy storage systems, must have a safety data sheet specific for that battery system installed, available in either the switchboard or the meter panel.
Yep.
Okay.
So, right.
As an auditor, you'd see it all the time.
See it all the time.
Yep.
And it's got to be a physical copy.
Yes.
Yep.
It has to be a copy.
That's right.
Specific for that battery system.
That's right.
It says the hazards and risks associated with that battery system.
There's been a few times I've had people bring up with, there's a QR code there. And I'm like, well, if you look at the standard, it actually says it needs to be a physical copy. Mm-hmm. So, interesting.
Yeah. And complacency. By doing the same job over and over again, we all risk complacency. And I see plenty of occasions we're getting simple things wrong, like the main switch grid supply is put in the position of a main switch inverter supply and vice versa. So when you're following that shutdown procedure, you're hitting the wrong switch. That's pretty vital to get right. So my advice is to always go back and double check your labelling, but also have someone else in your team to check it. If you've got an apprentice, teach them how to do it so they're learning as they go. They might pick up that second set of eyes on something you've either missed or have done incorrectly.
Good tip. Everyone learns then.
Yep.
All right. That's good. All right. What else have we got for labelling? You've mentioned most of this stuff, haven't you? Double check. Yeah, you've got it. You've got all that. I'm just seeing things I see a little bit out there. Still see. I see a lot. It's probably not quite as serious, although you may not agree with that. I'm not sure, but they've got the ES label, and they don't write the chemistry. Mm-hmm. See that a little bit still.
Yep.
Or it's rubbed off by the time we get there.
Yeah.
Which that's an issue.
Yeah.
So I can see that's a problem. I see that a little bit. I'm seeing that ES label much more now. I think installers have got much better at that.
Yeah, I agree. The ES label, having it permanently and indelibly written on the UN number written on to that label is important because it needs to be there. Under the standards, and you may think it's not important, but the emergency services, the fire services, they do have a list of chemical compositions and what's made up of a battery system. So if it's got a UN number on there, most times now it's going to be a lithium number, we understand. But we still need to have it on there so they know what procedure they have to apply to this fire to safely put it out. For sure. All right. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're now going to move into probably my favourite topic. I've been hanging for this. Everyone, even though I've been frothing for this. All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, Scott. I want you to give me the most honest answer you can. If you're an LEI
and you're doing solar, you're an RE endorsed LEI doing lots of solar. Actually, let's put it the other way. Let's say you're a installer, right? You have an LEI who does regular work for you. You know they don't get on the roof to check your panels.
Mm-hmm.
They're signing your certificates. What would be potentially the risk? Is there a risk at all? Is there... What do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
LEIs not getting on the roof.
Yeah. It's a common topic of discussion, and
Yep.
really it shouldn't be a discussion. It shouldn't be happening out there.
Yep.
If I was a installer, an electrician installing something, and I knew my inspector wasn't getting on the roof
Yep.
to have my back to do the job that I'm paying him for, I'd be obviously shopping for another inspector.
Yep.
It's not something you would continue to do. If you're running your own business, you don't want someone just signing it off so you get it signed off.
Yep.
You run the risk of all the non-compliances. You run the risk. I had to call a installer yesterday, tell him something caught fire that he installed.
Yep.
That's the worst call in the world that I'd want as an installer, to know that I've caused a fire. Well, he didn't cause a fire. It was a product issue.
Yep.
But to know that my installation has caused a fire, that's
sure.
horrific for me. He was shaken up, as he would be.
Absolutely.
So it's about having that final check, the final inspection, and their following obligations as an inspector to identify, have your back and identify any risk
Yep.
to that installation before it's energised. That's why it's written into the Act.
Yep. Yep. Well, that's right. I mean, you can speak a little bit about the Act and those type of boring things, but I see it for myself. Like I suppose sell it to installers as I'm protecting them.
Yep.
If I've checked the job, they're not going to get demerit points unless I miss something, and then I'll want to know about it, and we all learn something. So I think that's a good lesson, but I feel like it's a protection for the installer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I speak to people in other states that don't have this, and a lot of them that is kind of doing the right thing are like, oh, I would love that. I would love to have an LEI who gets on the roof, checks things after we've looked at it, gives us feedback, works together with us, is in our corner, and all trying to work towards the same goal. And it's almost like, I suppose we're sort of employed as a bit of a consultant. Anyway, I'm not trying to sell too much about the LEI system, because I think it's quite good in Victoria the way we do it. I want to keep it more about getting on the roof, because I think that's more the I think that's potentially the issue in Victoria, because you have to do it. You have to have an LEI sign it off for starters to get your STCs and all the government grants and all those type of things, or even just to get your certificate done. But unless they're getting on the roof, like they're certainly not doing it properly if they're not doing that.
No, they're not having the back of the installers.
Yep.
And they're not meeting their obligations under the Act by doing so.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to do you want me to
let's see how we go. How about I pull you up if it gets too boring?
Yeah, I know.
You know what? I'll probably love it. I'll be sitting there going, oh yeah, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see how we go. All right, jump in. Let's jump into the Act
boring,
a little bit.
But the problem is the Act is black and white, so
Yep.
we have to read the words and we have to look at the words.
Sure.
We can't be opinionated with this sort of thing.
No.
We have to follow the words, okay?
That's right.
So the Act states under 45.4, a licensed electrical inspector must not sign a certificate of inspection for any prescribed electrical installation work unless it describes the work, states the work the inspector has inspected the work, states whether or not the work complies with the Act and the regulations, and contains any other details relevant to the work required by the regulations.
Yep.
So the LEI has to have a CES to get there. Okay? You can't go and inspect a job without a certificate of safety.
Yep.
He must inspect the prescribed work, and he must specify whether it's compliant. Therefore, you have to have inspected the work.
Yep.
All right? And the last point, D, refers to things like the LEI. You need to record the defects if there's any defects there on the certificate of safety.
Yep.
Okay? Then we go into the most important parts, which is the regulations. Now, the regulations break down what the inspector needs to do. And first we look at Regulation 249, which states the electrical installation work that must be inspected. And that says prescribed electrical installation work means work on all or part of any of the following that work at low voltage. Section F covers solar installations. So electrical generation systems, including any wiring systems, switchgear, control gear, accessories, or protection to those generation systems. So that tells me everything within a solar system.
Yep.
Not just the panels and the inverter. Everything is prescribed.
Good point. Before you move on, that's a good point, right? So that you're saying that it says it here, black and white in the Act, all those parts that you just spoke about are prescribed electrical work that requires an inspection.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
It's black and white. So even if you're, just because it's a panel or or any of the wiring, any of it, it all falls into anything here.
Every part
of the solar install.
And then we talk about battery systems. So section 3 is on battery systems, and it says electrical installation work on all or part of any battery system, including work associated with wiring systems, switchgear, control gear, and accessories. So again, every part of a battery system is prescribed work.
Yep.
That's control gear and switchgear and accessories. So think about that for a minute.
I know. I'm actually looking at that and going.
So you've got a Tesla and a Tesla gateway, which is a common issue. The gateway is an accessory and a control gear for that Tesla battery.
Yep.
It is prescribed work.
Yep.
Okay. So these regulations tell us that all parts of solar and battery systems are deemed to be prescribed work. So the inspector or the LEI needs to ensure that all parts are visually inspected and all parts are tested in accordance with the Act. Okay?
Yep.
All parts of the prescribed work. Now that tells me right there, all parts. I can't be not getting on a roof.
Yeah, well, there it is. You can't not get on a roof.
Okay.
Yep.
The regulations continue into the obligations of an inspector. So under 253, that specifies the obligations. So it says a licensed electrical inspector must not sign a certificate of inspection unless that inspector, A, has attended the electrical installation address stated on the certificate. So that's part 1.
So you got to go. Is that right? You're
go.
telling me you have to turn up to do an inspection. Is that what you're saying? Right. That's
Years ago, when I was an electrician,
yep,
around that time, inspectors could do a desk audit. So they would ring you up and say, oh, you put downlights in. How far away was the insulation from the downlight?
Yep.
How close was the nearest bit of wood? You know, because they can't get into the house, they do a desk audit. No more.
Yeah. Better than nothing, but
better than nothing.
Obviously, it's...
Yeah. But as an electrician, you can tell them anything.
Yeah, that's true.
know?
And remember, back then, no photos that you could send in either or check.
No, not at all.
Yep.
So you can't even FaceTime them anymore. They have to go.
Have to go. Yep.
All right. So part 2. So regarding the rooftop, says the inspector has carried out an inspection of all prescribed electrical installation work described in the certificate in accordance with the wiring rules and the regulation. So that's part 2. So this is regarding rooftops. If a certificate of safety says there's a PV array of 16 panels, the electrical inspector must inspect along with the wiring, inspect all panels along with the wiring, the earthing, the connections, the support system. Because we were told that back in the regulations, 249. If the certificate of safety says 500 panels, guess what?
You're checking all of them.
We've got to check all of them. We've got to do both your visual and your testing on all of them. Then we have part 3, which is the testing, which states, has carried out testing of all prescribed electrical work described on the certificate in accordance with the wiring rules and under Division 10. Okay? So that's saying we need to carry out our mandatory tests in Section 8 of AS 3000. Now, Division 10 goes into all the various different electrical installations.
Yep.
So that tells us for PV arrays, we need to test to 5033. For battery systems, we test to 5139. Okay? So all those testing requirements are called up in the Act and the regulations.
Yep.
So as an inspector, for prescribed work, you've got to carry out that testing.
Yep.
Okay? So it's vital that you do that. If you don't do it, you're not following your obligations. You're not doing right by the people that are engaging you, your electricians, or the customer, and you're setting yourself up liable for identified breaches of the
You're
Act.
not doing your job.
No.
That's what it comes down to, isn't it? Not doing the job you're getting paid to do and what your license says you should be doing.
Yep.
Yep.
So if you do cover all your obligations as an LEI and do your visual testing and do your normal testing and any other testing associated with the prescribed work, if we do that, good job. You've done your job. Sign it off. Sign the certificate. Move on to the next one.
Yep. Cool. Well, that's good. That wasn't too painful, was it?
No.
Sorry,
it's always bad when you're reading, going through the regulations. I've got one more to go through. If we want to get to it.
Yeah, come on, keep going. Yeah. You haven't worn me out yet.
No.
No.
All right. Well, we'll come back to the non-compliances.
Yep.
I want to point out section 45.1.
Yep.
All right. So this is an important one for installers and inspectors because it states that inspection of electrical installation work. A person who is responsible for carrying out prescribed electrical installation work must ensure the work is inspected by a licensed electrical inspector in accordance with the regulations before the electrical installation is connected to the electricity supply.
Yep.
Okay. So that tells us anything that's classified as prescribed work, which we discussed that before with the battery systems and the solar systems, anything that's prescribed work must not be left energised until it's verified and inspected by a licensed electrical inspector.
But they can test, right? So they can test the grid?
Yeah, that's why I said can't be
that's
left.
right. I knew that. It's right. I'm trying to play. I'm trying to play the buffoon here. I do know this.
Yeah, no worries. I chose that word instead of saying can't be turned on.
Yes,
so
cool.
It can't be left. So they're allowed to do commissioning tests.
Commissioning tests, yep.
So you turn it on, you do your testing first, you turn it on, you test your anti-idling functions, you test the operation, you do your commissioning, then you turn it off, and you leave it off till it's inspected. Okay.
Yep. So it's got to be. Is the letter of the law? It's got to be turned off once those tests are finished. Is that how? Or does it not really say that? Or?
No, the letter of the law says it can't be left energised.
Just can't be left energised. Yeah.
You can do all your testing. It can take you all day to do it if you want.
Yeah. Okay.
But once you've finished your testing and you're about to leave, turn the system off.
Yeah. So that means if you had the LEI saying, "All right, I'm going to meet you there, but now I'm stuck in traffic," you can't, and you decide to go home, right? You then can't leave it on for the LEI, even if it's the same day.
No.
You can't. No, that's right.
No, has to be left off.
Has to be left off if you're not there. Yep.
Correct.
Beautiful.
Now this is important to understand because the Act details the requirements of PV and battery systems, which we all know is prescribed work. And when we're talking about portions of prescribed work, we need to break that down a little bit. So we know we're going to leave the switchboard off. We know we're going to leave the inverter off. There's other parts to that. Yeah, PV array is prescribed work. We discussed that before. That has to be left disconnected as well. We cannot, when we used to have isolators, we used to say the isolators need to be left off.
Yep.
Well, now we've got disconnection points and it needs to be disconnected at the roof. If you're plugging those two disconnection points in, and then just turning the isolators off downstairs, you've energised the PV array down to the input terminals of the isolator or inverter. Okay, you've energised that portion of prescribed electrical work and left it on. So that is a breach of the Act and is enforceable. Okay, so people need to be aware of that. What that also, we're not trying to say this to encourage it, but what it does mean that the inspector who does have to get on the roof will have to plug it in. Okay, to complete his testing. Once he's done all his testing, he can plug it in to complete his testing as well. Okay, but it's just one more stage to say this is all part of the process, and to the letter of the law, this is the way it must be done.
No, that makes sense. Look, it does encourage, again, inspectors to get on the roof, because if they don't, then they can't have a working system. But I don't want to sort of indicate that that's what it's about. We're not saying leave it disconnected so inspectors get on the roof. No, okay, fair enough.
It's about installers need to leave it disconnected.
So it's not energised.
Because the Act says you can't leave prescribed work energised. Okay, that's what it's about. It's just that inspectors will, if you have an inspector, he will have to get on the roof to do his normal testing anyway, so he's going to be connecting it. It's those inspectors that we speak about that have the drive-by inspection, or they're doing multiples in a day. We know that possibly aren't achievable. Won't be getting on a roof. They're the ones that we need to identify and get out of our industry.
Totally agree with that. If you need help doing that, by the way, I'm happy to help. But this is the thing. It's puts, I feel like I'm doing the right thing myself and trying to put that word out there. But you still hear it a little bit, and it's a bit of a it's good that it's good you guys are aware of it. And it's really, really good.
It does happen.
Yep.
And again, I'm happy to say it is a minority.
Yeah, for sure.
The majority of inspections.
Definitely getting better. Definitely.
Yep. And the thing is that I really enjoy getting calls from inspectors. There's a lot of inspectors that call either Sandy Atkins, my supervisor, or myself, or Greg Johnson, my colleague.
Yep.
They'll call us quite often about questions about things to clarify the standards. That's ideal. That's what we want. We want to be approachable.
Yep.
We want to be able to help you out there. So don't feel that you're alone. Or I know a lot of inspectors work amongst small groups, which is fantastic as well.
Yep.
Share the knowledge, but we're happy to assist in that as well to clarify things.
For sure. You know what? I actually feel like inspectors could do a little bit better themselves, like speaking to each other a little bit more. I feel like when I first became an inspector, there was not that much of a community of inspectors. Not that I could see straight away anyway.
I'm seeing it more and more.
You're definitely seeing it more and more. Look, maybe, I don't know if that's with the younger ones coming through now.
Yep.
I think maybe it's potentially some of the older ones would just sort of keep to themselves a little bit, just do what they were doing. Maybe a lot of them were SEC inspectors, I don't know. And probably a lot of them are coming to retirement age around about now. But yeah, I've noticed a lot of younger ones coming through, and they seem to be more open to speak to other inspectors, collaborate with them, work together and not against each other. I think we're trying to take something off each other. Like, there's plenty of work for everyone.
Yeah. And I love it when I get a call and they'll say, we've got a group, we've spoken to a few inspectors and we've got different opinions. Can you hear what we've got to say?
Yep.
And I said, absolutely, I want to hear the opinions.
Yeah.
Because everyone sees something differently or reads a clause differently.
Yep.
So if we can assist to get that consistency in the industry, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I want those calls.
For sure. All right, good stuff. I reckon let's touch on the here we go. The penalties. Let's not go too far into this.
No.
But
we've talked about the breaches.
Yeah, we've talked about the breaches. Let's talk about the penalties.
Yeah.
That's clearly the next progressive thing.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are the penalties like?
All right.
What are they?
Okay.
I don't know. I've never come under enforcement action by ESV. Touch wood. Oh my God, I hope I never do. But it's happened, and it happens to people, and they make mistakes. Whether it's intentional or not, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. At the end of the day, if you do something wrong, this is something that could happen.
Correct. Well, we know our regulation. Division 11 in the regulation sets out the obligations and requirements for an electrical inspector to carry out his inspections. It goes right into that. So, Energy Safe, we may take enforcement action. Where breaches of either the Act, the regulations, or, if they don't comply with the standards, they're breaching the Act.
Yep.
Okay? So it all ties back to the hierarchy of documents there. So we've got a few different tools that we can use. If it's a minor issue, Energy Safe may issue a warning letter to the LEI. Okay?
Yep.
With this action, we're trying to educate, we're trying to support and guide. And improve the knowledge for an LEI to assist with improving his inspections.
Yep.
So there's really no monetary. There's no criminal conviction or anything for it.
Yep.
It's a warning letter to say, we're aware you've done this.
Yeah.
Please learn from it and change your ways, and call us if you need any more support.
So it is that. It's a bit of a softer, educational approach.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Sure.
That's right. And it opens that avenue for communication, because when I do investigate a matter and issue a warning letter, I've brought them the breaches. I've showed them what they've done wrong. I've showed them what it says in the Act, and we've worked through that. So they should understand moving forward what they need to do in the future.
Yep.
For other breaches, Energy Safe may issue a infringement notice. Now, this is a monetary fine.
Yep. And
for LEIs, it can sort of range anywhere between, say, $200 and $1,000.
Yep.
Which can be quite considerable for someone who's trying to make ends meet. And And the severity it depends on the offence that's occurred, and the amount is actually applicable relating to the number of penalty points.
Penalty units, is it?
Yeah.
That's right. And does that change? That's penalty units with, is it with inflation or not inflation, CPI or something like that?
Yeah, it goes up
like
slightly each year.
Each year. Yeah.
So I oh gee, it gets me here.
No, it's all right.
I think it's sitting about $190.
Yeah, sure. I've seen that wording in a lot. Well, since I've been an apprentice and I've been reading these type of documents. Yeah.
So that varies relating to the severity of the offence.
Yep.
Okay. And obviously for serious breaches of the Act, such as neglecting their responsibilities, not going to site, signing off certificates, poses risks to the community. Okay, so we may look at disciplinary action.
Yep.
And what that means with an RE endorsement now, that if we do take disciplinary action, we may be able to either restrict what they do, or we remove that portion, or we can remove that whole LEI if it's that serious. And the next stage, of course, would be prosecution, that we take it to the magistrate's court, and this has a whole next layer of costs involved, as well as potentially criminal convictions. But it's got to be pretty serious to get to that stage. So all I can say is let's stick to the
educational type supportive. I agree.
That's right. So keep using us as an education process. Rather than the big stick. We want to keep away from that. We're not that sort of regulator.
All right, cool. All right, well, Scott, we're going to go to our second break now. When we come back, there's a couple of extra things I want to talk about with you. Maybe some of the stuff that's going to happen in the future. I also want to have a little chat about the RE endorsement or RE license for LEIs, which I think has been a really good addition. Anyway, we'll speak about that and a few other things when we come back. So that'll be coming right up. Okay, and we're back from our last break. All right, well, this is going okay, I reckon, Scott. We haven't really. I mean, usually I'm touching on mental health and all these sort of things, and this is a little bit more. It's a little bit more serious, bit of black and white stuff, but it's good. It's good, changing things up a bit. I reckon it's good. So, you do a lot of educational type pieces, and you speak. Your team at Energy Safe, you speak at industry events. Whether that's all energy or those type of things. You like to get out and do that educational stuff and have a conversation with the people out there that are installing?
I think that's important. For one, as a regulator, to be seen out there, to be seen presenting at All Energy, at NECA events, at CEC or hopefully SAA events. These are all areas where we see installers coming along to find out, to learn, to have some guidance. So the more we do that and the more we show our face there, the more approachable we are as well. And the amount of conversations that we have after we've presented, there's someone who comes up and says, I've got this scenario. Can you just talk to me about that?
Absolutely. You've got to be on your game with that when that all happens, because that's when people do sort of bombard you a little bit. And no, I understand. I get that happen to me a little bit when I go to cutters nights, road shows and those sort of things.
That's right. But I guess people need to understand we don't know everything, and I'm not going to claim to know everything. And often I'll say to someone, that's a really good point. Let me find out and I'll get back to you with an answer. So I'll take the details down, I'll research it, I'll talk to other compliance officers or other subject matter experts on that particular topic and get back to them with the correct answer. Because it could splash into other zones. Let's say, how close can I put a battery to a gas meter? You're going to
open that can of worms, are you? No.
I'm not going to go into it now.
No.
But for those sorts of things, when I come down with an answer, I need to talk to our gas team. So I need to go to other SMEs. So I just don't make up something out of my head. I need to go, right, our standards say this, but it doesn't cover it. So I need to go to their standards and get this and then marry them together to get the right response back. Sure.
No, I totally agree with that, for sure. I found a lot of the time when I speak to people about Energy Safe Victoria, sometimes they can get a bit disgruntled because they're not receiving from you guys a more of an instructional approach. And I sort of say, well, they're not there to tell you how to do your job.
Correct.
They're there to tell you how to comply with the rules and make sure that you're doing the best you can. It's not about it's an industry body, or the ones they need to be going to, or their LEI or whoever it is, but it's Energy Safe are not the ones to provide that guidance. Like,
Correct.
I mean, I'm sure you'll help where you're able to.
Yeah.
And be as educational as you can, but
absolutely, we can we can't tell them how to do something.
Yeah,
we can.
That's right.
We can guide them in the direction, and we can say what, black and white, how they need to comply.
Yep.
And often the words in the standards are hard to understand, and you've got to refer to 12 different sections to get the right answer.
Yeah.
But if we can, work the way through that and get a clear answer for them.
Yep.
And often it takes a bit of work, but we can help them to guide them through and to get the right installation method.
Yep.
But they've got to come up with a method that complies with the requirements.
For sure. I found that a lot of the stuff you guys do release, like some of the technical documents you've got on the website, I find them, like, although they're not instructional, they can kind of almost be used in that way. They do tell you. They're very helpful. Anyway,
Correct.
Very helpful.
Again, we've got to go back to the standards. So I do put out a lot of guidance notes, and, and if anyone wants to jump onto the ESV website, we've got a lot. I think we're getting to that later on, but I do a lot of technical guides and guidance notes and safety alerts. And you'll see the safety alerts on things like the exposed live parts that I've spoken about before.
Yep.
And it clearly shows photos, how it's been installed, why it doesn't comply, what tests need to be included in an installation to ensure that it meets compliance before you sign it off.
Yep.
Okay. So there's all those sorts of things we do. These events are great because we can showcase things that are happening in the moment, the most common issues, as well as changes to standards, and they're the events that people need to get along to keep up to date with their requirements. And we know that people are working out there. I've worked as a contractor for years as well. I don't have time to be sitting up at night reading standards, looking through legislations to make sure that what I'm doing is actually complying. But going along to these events, they highlight all changes and summary points, and make sure that the things that are important to your industry that you're aware of, that have changed, that you do need to know about, you do need to comply to.
That's right. I think it's a good point. You don't have to know the standards back to front to cover, like back to front, and know every word of them word for word. But you're right. You do need to be aware of the parts that affect the work that you're doing.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I find you also need to know where to find. You need to know where to look when you do run into these issues.
Yeah. We also go along, we do a lot of regular site visits. So we'll go out to Solarvic sites. Now, it's always confronting when ESV or WorkSafe or as Energy Safe, we walk on a site and the first thing is, Energy Safe's on site, shit, we're going to be caught doing something wrong, which isn't the case. Most of the time people are doing it right, unless there's unlicensed workers or a couple of apprentices working by themselves on the roof, and then we come down, and make sure people are working safe, and people, we do take enforcement action against that. But 99% of the time people are doing the right thing. So the conversation on site is talking about industry common issues, standards changes. We clarify lots of things. I might suggest a few things about things that I see on site, go, you're aware that's changed in the standard now. You don't have to. You don't have to put an earth lug on every rail anymore. And they go, what? Our inspector says we have to. I said, well, if you want your inspector to give me a call, let me know who he is. I said, I'll have a chat to him as well. We need that consistency. It's not about getting anyone in trouble. I'm not going to take any action on that. It's about having that conversation and highlighting things that have changed that they haven't had time to keep up with. By the time I leave, it's such a positive response that quite often I give them a card as well, and they're saying, oh, great, can I call you anytime if I need to clarify something? So it's a really good response, and it's it's a good part of our job. It's probably the best part of our job that is proactive. So we're out there trying to educate and stop things from being installed wrong from the start. We're ensuring licensed people are on site. Apprentices are being supervised. And whilst there's a prime opportunity to talk about things that have been in the back of their head, that they've had an audit they didn't agree with, their inspectors having them do something that they didn't agree with.
Yep.
Perfect opportunity to pick our brains.
Yeah.
To get the answer to comply with the installation.
For sure. I think, it's like I've mentioned it so many times in this podcast. The more collaboration we can do with each other, even if it's just a conversation with whoever it is, all getting these ideas together, speaking about these issues, no one knows all the answers. But collectively, you can usually either be pointed in the right direction or find out the right answer.
Correct.
It's written somewhere or you'll find it somewhere. So keep talking. And yeah, I think we're pretty good at that in this industry. But yeah, it's good to reiterate that point.
Yep.
Because no one knows it all. No one knows it all. All right, that's good.
Correct. So I'll touch on that on the website.
Yep.
So if people go to our website, go to the technical documents and guidance notes.
Yep.
There's a whole lot of guidance notes in there from identifying mismatched connectors, DC connectors. So it really clarifies how to tell the difference between connectors, because we all know they look very similar.
Yep.
You're going to have copies of MC genuine connectors that look like MC connectors.
Yep.
So I really encourage LEIs as well. Have a look at this.
I'm pretty good at this now. I actually never used to be that good.
Yeah.
I reckon I can do it now. I reckon if you put two in front of me, I'd be able to work it out. Even the MC4 counterfeit ones or whatever they are, I usually know where the marks should be and the arrows and all those sort of things.
And once you know those points, it's quite simple. You can look at them. You go, oh, hang on, those knurled nuts on their end, they're slightly different.
Yep.
And then you'll notice a little logo or something slightly different.
That's right.
So
I still get thrown off, even though I've seen thousands and thousands of these. I still get thrown off when I see the Staubli with the MC4 because they just look so stupid together.
Yeah, they do.
It's just
totally different.
It looks ridiculous, but they're fine. It's it's like the exception to the rule.
Yes, correct.
So yeah, okay. So you got some stuff on that. Look, I'll put in the show notes the links to the technical guidance that you've got on the ESV website. So I'll make sure that goes in the show notes.
Terrific. And what we try and do is common issues that come up. We try and, I should say Solar Vic have been working a lot with their guidance notes as well.
Yep.
So they come through to us and they say, right, how do we word this? They write it. We just review it to make sure that it aligns with our standards and the message we want to send out there as well.
Yep.
So jump on the Solar Vic site as well. They got plenty of guidance notes on there about risk of electrocution, earthing, installing things, so that's another fantastic.
I'll chuck that on there as well. I'll chuck the Solar Vic links as well, because there's some good stuff on there too.
Yep. And if anyone feels that there's topics that are happening all the time that need to be clarified, we can maybe suggest a Solar Vic, or if it's a safety issue that we feel is important enough, we can look at that, and if it's required, we can do a guidance note on that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about providing that education and guidance and support to the industry to make sure we're all doing a nice, safe, correct job.
Yep, perfect. Very good.
Okay.
All right, that's good. All right, look, I think we've just about covered everything, Scott. I think it's going to be a reasonably long episode, but I think it's a lot of information in there. We've covered a lot of stuff. I reckon the listeners are going to appreciate it. And I reckon even if you're not an LEI or an LEW, you might be doing sales, or you might be, even doing some admin work or something like that. I reckon you might get a little bit out of this. Have a listen to the acronyms, listen to the things that we're saying. And it's a whole different world of compliance. Not just selling systems and just throwing things on roof. Got to do it properly, and we've got to do it safely. And we have people like Scott doing their job to make sure that the act gets followed. And I think we do a really good job of it in Victoria. So it makes me proud to be a Victorian. Maybe I'm going to run out on the footy field here with my big V on, maybe pounding my chest, because I think we do it well in Victoria. And so I'm happy to be a Victorian in the solar industry. And I think we do it well. So, all right, we'll move into some closing comments. From you, Scott. You got any closing comments, Scott, about before we wrap things up?
I just want to look. I've been, as I have mentioned throughout this podcast, I've been in solar a long time.
Yep.
I've been an inspector for a long time as well, and ESV for 5 years. And I've seen some wonderful improvement in the industry. It's really gone well from the days where every man and his dog was in there for the rebates and it was crazy. And even since I started at ESV 5 years ago, when it was quite common for me to turn up and find unlicensed workers everywhere.
Yeah.
Very rare for me to find that nowadays. So the industry has really cleaned up well. And I think the reflection of that is when I look at the list of defects and non-compliances from the audits, it really shows that 5 years ago the audits were high on defect rates of things that were severe.
Much more serious,
much more severe. Yeah. Water ingress in isolators. Mismatched DC connectors. 40% of systems had DC mismatched connectors.
Yeah.
I still get reports of lots of fires, but they're from older historic systems that haven't been maintained now. Okay. So what I see now, if we're talking about labelling is the highest defect rate, we're doing pretty well in the industry.
It's good, isn't it?
We've gotten down to...
I got a warm, fuzzy feeling then. That's good. If it's just labelling, I mean, it's everything's serious. We want to get better no matter what. But labelling's better than having access to live parts.
Yeah. So much so. Look, we do get other non-compliances and things that require rectification work. But if we're talking about the most major thing in the defects is labelling, we're doing very well in the industry. So everyone should be very proud of what they're doing out there.
For sure. That's great. Good stuff. Thanks for that, Scott. All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up now. I want to say thanks, Scott, for coming out, making the effort to come out to Carrum. I've spoken to you a lot about this sort of stuff over the years, and a lot of it sort of isn't that much news to me, but it's really great to just go over it again, have a bit of a refresher with this sort of stuff, even if, reading the standards and the act, it was the regulation, can be boring as batshit sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like it can be, but it's there and we need to know it. So hopefully everyone got something out of that. So thanks for coming in, Scott, and being able to share everything that you did. And there'll be a lot out of it for the listeners.
I hope so. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks
for having me.
Thank you. Oh, are you going to you guys going to be speaking at All Energy? I know you'll be there.
Yes.
You will be.
Yes, both myself and Sandy will be speaking at All Energy this year.
Great.
So come up and say hi, anyone who's listening.
Yeah, beautiful. No worries. All right, good stuff. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode. I've got to the end of 21, so officially now in the top 1% of podcasters.
Well done.
Thank you. I won't do too much of a tease for next week. I'm going to save that. I'm not going to talk much about next week, but there will be a show next week, and we'll see how that all goes. All right, well, that's come to the end of the episode, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Solar Sidekicks. Thanks very much, everyone.